Hey, good morning. This is Ken Brownlee with the Brownlee Group. Today we're bringing someone in to talk to us about home insurance and what it's all about. So I'd like to introduce Kim Willis. Kim, how you doing?
Good, Ken.
Thanks for being here too.
Thanks for having me. I'm Kim Willis. I'm with Florida Best Quote Insurance, and I am in the Keller Williams office, suburban Tampa. So I am here to answer any questions that Ken has for me to help better educate you guys on insurance.
Good. I did write down a few. I hope I don't catch you off guard and we'll get going. And then I will come up with a few more as we go along if you don't mind.
Sounds good.
Awesome. If I would, I'd like to start off with flood insurance. This is hurricane season for us, so flood insurance. Is it necessary, and how do I know if it's necessary for the customer?
Okay. So FEMA has the National Flood Insurance Program is part of FEMA, which is obviously the government, federal government run. They have done maps all pretty much in every coastal area, and they are assigned letters. An X flood zone, which is different from an evacuation zone. A lot of people confuse them because on Property Appraiser there is an evacuation zone, which has absolutely nothing to do with flood zones. So an X flood zone, meaning it is a low risk of flood in a 100-year flood map, or flood plain is what they call it. That is not required by a lender. That is, you are able to purchase flood insurance if you're in an X flood zone, but it is called preferred flood insurance, and those are set rates. Then there's an AE flood zone, which is what most of Hillsborough and Pinellas County will be, other than the coast.
An AE is
AE,
different levels.
An AE is a higher risk of a flood event happening in a 100-year time period. So AE flood zones, flood is required by a lender. You have to have it if you have a loan. And then the highest one in Florida is called VE, and that is if you're on the coast, it is not only the risk of rising water, it is also the risk of wave action. So those are the most expensive, the highest risk flood zone that you can be in. And that according to whatever flood zone you're in is, whether it's required by a lender or you can purchase it if you would like. If you choose to purchase preferred flood insurance, if you're in an X flood zone, a lender will not pay for that. That's something you have to pay for on your own if you would like to have it. So that.
Would you recommend someone buy flood insurance? And what is the definition of flood?
Okay, the definition of flood is an area has to be 2 acres or more have to flood. 2 adjacent homes or more have to flood. So the opposite of that is if your pool overflows and floods into your home, and your home only is that is not considered flood. So it has to be rising water from an outside source, a river, a ditch, a pond, river, what am I calling it? The intercoastal waterway, something like that. So,
which would now bring up, since it came from your pool, let's say, would that be covered under any other coverage besides flood?
No, it would not be covered by your homeowner's insurance because it was coming from an outside source, but you should have drained your pool. It's not something. Homeowner's insurance covers flood that comes from within the home. A pipe bursting, a washing machine hose, a toilet overflow, things like that would come from inside the house that causes damage. But anything coming from outside is not. And a pool overflowing into your home would also not be considered flood. So you're kind of in no man's land there. You don't have coverage for a pool overflowing.
But being that you mentioned your water line or a pipe breaks, a house that's older that has copper piping, if it floods, it is covered. It's not covered under flood insurance, but
homeowner's insurance.
On the homeowner. So you still have coverage.
Water damage would be, yes, that would be the coverage.
Okay.
And obviously it would be up to an adjuster to determine, that the peril is listed in your policy and that it's covered, and because slab leaks aren't covered. So it just depends upon where it came from.
Okay. Now, let's jump over to homeowners a little bit more. When we are selling a house or somebody wants to buy a house, we always recommend getting a 4-point. Can you just tell us a little bit about a 4-point? Is it mandatory? And if it is, where is it coming from? Or what does it cover?
Okay, so a 4-point inspection, each carrier has age requirements for a 4-point inspection. It's getting to be younger and younger, so I usually tell people at 20 years. Citizens requires 20 years, so I usually tell people at 20 years age of a home, a 4-point is required. A 4-point covers the roof, the electrical, plumbing, and the HVAC. Those are the 4 main things that homeowners insurance carriers are concerned about. In the 4-point inspection, a licensed home inspector would say what is the condition of those 4 different systems of the home, what if there are any hazards or deficiencies, and what are the updates, the year of updates. That's a big deal for homeowners insurance carriers, especially when it comes to roof and water heaters. Those are 2 things where losses most occur, and so they want to make sure those things have been updated, there are no hazards or deficiencies.
So who's asking for the 4-point?
The insurance carrier.
Carrier. So if I want to insure my house, you'll ask me to get a 4-point done.
Correct.
All right. And then you mentioned the roof. If I'm buying a house, and I know there's a crazy world right now in Florida with roofs. Tell me a little bit more about what's mandatory and what's a good option about roofs, if you could.
Okay, so a lot of carriers have limited the roof age. Some of them have limited them down to like 7 years. Citizens still accepts a roof up to 25 years old as long as the 4-point gives it at least 3 years of life left. And in the 4-point inspection, in the roof section, it asks the inspector how many years of life. Now, obviously, it's an estimate given by the inspector based upon the condition of the roof, whether it be shingle or tile or metal, but Citizens requires at least 3 years of life left. If you do not have 3 years of life left and the roof is old enough such that no other carrier will take it, Citizens won't take it either. They do allow us to submit unbound for review roof replacement within 60 days. So if your buyer is planning on, the seller doesn't want to replace the roof, but your buyer is planning on replacing it after closing, there is a way around that as long as within 60 days they have a signed roofing contract with a start and completion date, and we turn that in, and as long as the roof is the only issue. 4-point still has to be turned in, stating what everything else looks like, as long as there's no electrical or plumbing or HVAC issues, and it's only the roof that needs replacing, Citizens will take it.
Only Citizens, though.
Only Citizens right now is allowing for, we used to have other carriers that would allow 30 or 60 days, but that's gone by the wayside with the way the insurance industry is right now. Most carriers aren't even writing in Florida right now.
Why is that?
Fraud. They've experienced so many losses, they're losing money, and so they just don't want to be in Florida. A lot of them write in other states. So by them not writing in Florida doesn't mean they've gone out of business. It just means they're not writing new business in Florida. They're still servicing their existing business that they have in Florida, and then they're writing in other states. They just don't want to take on any new business because they've lost so much money due to litigation and roof fraud. Those are the 2 big reasons that the industry is blown up.
And why don't they just raise their rates and cover it? It's a trick question.
I don't even think it's worth it to them, even with astronomical rates.
Yeah.
And so it's all hinging on legislation and what the government decides to do. So they did have a special session in May, and not enough change was made to make the insurance carriers happy. So basically, they've stuck to, we're not writing in Florida. The only new construction, they love that. So most of them are writing if you're 2021, 2022 construction. They like that, they're good with that. But any older than that, which is most of the houses, they're just not writing.
They're not obligated to either.
No,
It's a business.
It's a business, it's a private entity. Now, Citizens is obligated, but they even have restrictions in that your 4-point has to be clean, no hazards, deficiencies. Roof has to have at least 3 years of life left, all those good things.
Okay, so you have the wind mitt and the 4-point. What is the difference in the 2? And I know they come up a lot. So how do you differentiate the 2, and what are you looking for?
Okay, so a 4-point is required. because they want to know what they're insuring. They want to know what all those systems look like. The WinMit is not required, but it is beneficial for credits on your premium. So premium is a big deal. Most people want the lowest premium they can possibly get. So that's where the wind mitigation inspection comes in. That is, an inspector has to get up in the attic. He has to see, or he or she has to see how the roof is attached to the 2x4s at the trusses, where the 2x4s and the truss meets. Some homes have hurricane clips, which are basically, it's a metal clip attached by 3 nails. That's a credit. If it only has 2 nails, it's not a credit. If it only has nails without that metal clip, not a credit. And then also in the boards underneath the shingles, the nail spacing and the nail size, that's also a credit if it meets the qualification. So wind mitigation credits can be, $500 to $800 credits, so they're good. Newer roofs, newer homes usually have the hurricane clips. Older homes, a lot of times they don't. Usually it's about 1975 is the cutoff. It wasn't required in Florida in 1975, 1980, but a lot of builders were using the hurricane clips. 1992, after Hurricane Andrew, it became mandatory it was new building
After
code.
92.
After 92, when they kind of revamped a bunch of things for insurance. It became building code to be built with hurricane clips. So, but only 2 nails at that time. Then insurance started requiring 3 nails. So a lot of people will have, if they don't have that 3rd nail to qualify, they will have someone go in and add the 3rd nail to get the discount.
What about a home built in 75? You mentioned 75 is when, can you add those
The hurricane clips.
Yeah.
You
I
can.
was going to say strip, but it's a
Yeah,
clip.
it's a clip. And actually the clip itself is extremely inexpensive. You can buy them at Home Depot. It's the labor because, a lot of attic spaces are very tight. Some of them are inaccessible.
Especially in the older homes.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, you can, and there are companies that do that, and people do that because over probably 2 or 3 years' time, it will have paid for itself in your insurance savings.
Okay.
So sometimes if they can't get the attic access, they can go up through a soffit. And it just depends upon how the house is built, and so we do have a couple companies that do that, and so you just have to have them out, see how they can access the areas that they need to put the clips in, and then you have to get a wind mitigation inspection in order to receive the discount, though.
Okay.
That has to be certified by a licensed inspector or a licensed roofer. Whoever does wind mitigation inspections has to state that there are clips, also has to have photos. They always back up the inspections with photos. Just the form isn't going to cut it. So, but
Okay.
Inspectors know that, and they're good about getting all the photos that are necessary.
Okay, cool. Anything about homeowners else that maybe we should cover, you know of?
Just that one very important thing is inspections. A lot of times the lender wants the insurance early on, for them to be able to get their whole closing package together. But we have to have inspections. So those are important. And a lot of times if you get your inspections early, you find out there might be some minor things that need to be fixed, like on an electrical, double taps or exposed wiring, things like that. Those are pretty minor, pretty inexpensive fixes. And so maybe you can get your seller to fix those things, and then we're good. 4 points fine. The only way to do that is to get your inspection early, find out so you have time to get those repairs, because that's a big thing. So I would recommend getting that inspection, getting it to your insurance agent as soon as possible so that they can let you know if there are any insurance issues.
Okay, now you bring up to your insurance agent. I always recommend anybody to call 3 people. If they were to call you, and it's Florida Best Quote Insurance.
Yes.
You're not a captive agent. Captive agent is based where you only sell one company, and that's it. It's take it or leave it, and you're good. Now, don't get me wrong, those other companies might have citizens, but
Yep.
that's all they are. How many homeowners do you carry?
We have 45 homeowners insurance carriers that we're appointed to write with.
So if I had them call you, they really just reached out to 45 companies.
Correct.
So they beat what I asked by 42.
Right.
Because I went 3, but you were giving them 45.
Right. So we shop them through everyone, depending upon, the home. Let's say it's not eligible with some carriers due to the roof age or whatever reason. We do have surplus lines carriers, which are outside of the private market, and they do accept other things that the private market and or citizens may not accept. So we do have options for just about every type of home, any kind of situation. Ideally, for premium, reasonable premium, you want the home to be in the best shape it can be in as far as your 4-point inspection and your electrical, because not a lot of carriers want to take a home on that a loss is looming any day now.
Yeah.
Old roof, electrical is a fire issue. So those are things that, to get the best premium and the best competition in the market, your house, is in the better shape it's in, the better your premium is going to be.
Trick question.
Okay.
Not too tricky.
Okay.
No, but you have 45 companies. Out of the 45, do any of them take pets, or is that an issue with any of them?
Most of them have it's called a vicious breed list. There are some carriers that don't care about it. The carriers that in the contract say animal liability is not covered. So some of them offer animal liability coverage. It's an endorsement. You would pay for it. It's actually not that expensive, but they won't take vicious breed dogs. Some carriers don't cover animal liability at all, so they're a little more lenient on their dog list. And then a few carriers don't have a dog list at all, a vicious breed ineligible dog list.
So again, it goes back to making your calls, getting quotes, find out what's happening.
Exactly.
And you'll cover the difference between actual cash value, replacement cost, what happens if they move, what kind of coverage you have in between. I know all the companies going to have something over the next guy, correct? So
Right.
you'll look at that and explain.
Yep. So all of every situation's different. So the more we know, the better. If you have a vicious breed dog, if you have a German Shepherd or a Doberman Pinscher or a pit bull, those types of dogs, that's important to
Or
know.
my sister-in-law. They're all, I get it.
So all those details are important to know. If it's a primary residence, if it's a secondary residence, different carriers have different guidelines for those types of things.
Airbnbs? Because that's
Airbnbs,
really grown.
Yep.
Okay.
We have carriers that'll take that, but not everybody. So that's a very important thing to know to quote you with the appropriate carrier.
Okay. What about if you have other coverages?
Mm-hmm.
So if they bundled some coverages maybe over time?
Yes, umbrella, flood if required, or if you just want it. Auto, we also do life, we do commercial, we do it all. So, but yes, bundling sometimes definitely is an advantage. Some carriers give a discount on the home side or the auto side if you have both, or if you have an umbrella with them or flood with them. So.
And you're not a captive agent, so you can quote multiple cars, what else? You said umbrella?
Umbrella and flood, those are the things most homeowners will need. Yes, and we also have private flood carriers. We have NFIP flood carriers, which basically the NFIP runs a lot of the flood, but they have private carriers that service their business. So it's backed by FEMA, but it might be run by a private carrier, serviced. So that's who you would go to for any changes or whatnot. But then we also have private flood carriers that came about a few years, 5-10 years ago, when the flood insurance market was kind of blowing up, kind of like the homeowners insurance market is now. They had private carriers were coming in and offering. So there was another option other than FEMA, because FEMA was increasing their rates so high. So we now have those options. So we have auto, lots of options, home and flood. We
Okay.
shop it and give the best that's out there.
Now, this is just my opinion on this, on the whole ordeal, is when you do buy a policy and it's coming out of your mortgage, let's say, or your house is paid off and you write the check annually, should they get it requoted every year? Because, you represent 45 companies, surely someone is going to change throughout the year or coverages, because none of them stay the same.
It depends upon whether you had an increase or not, a large increase, a small increase, If you have no increase at all, I would say why? You wouldn't want to shop it. If you're happy with your coverages and you're happy with the carrier, there's no reason to shop it because likely most of the time there are small increases, especially these days. We have had years past where there have been no change and maybe a slight decrease. Doesn't happen as often. Now, if you have a large increase, 20% or more, I would definitely say it's worth shopping. Right now, in this current market, likely not going to find anything better, except Citizens possibly. Citizens isn't ideal, but it is what it is, and today a lot of people are having to go with Citizens, whether they like it or not, because it's an affordable premium. The reason I say it's not ideal is because it is government run. It has gotten very large. They have a hard, they're going to be having a much harder time keeping up if you do have an issue, if you have a claim. They have so many policies, and they're really bigger than they were designed to be. They were designed to be insurer of last resort. Right now, that's where most people are going because of premium and what's out there. There's just not a lot of private carriers offering coverage in Florida.
And they
right now.
started in the 90s, Citizens.
Yes,
Because of Andrew.
right,
And the Department of Insurance wouldn't allow insurance companies to raise their rates, so they left the state.
right.
And now nobody had insurance, so the government had to come up with Citizens.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where we are again. They're having to take on a lot of policies that not typically ideal because obviously it becomes an issue for all of us. It's now a taxpayer issue. If we do have one or two bad hurricanes this year,
Citizens going to be hurting,
it's going to be a
which then we're going to be hurting. 'Cause
right.
We have to
They
pay for it.
have really good reserves, and they're going to be good as long as we don't have really one or two major catastrophic problems, storms.
Yeah.
And then, Citizens also has a clause in their policy that they can charge 45%, have a surcharge, 45% of your premium if they incur losses that they don't have the reserves for. So that's where they'll go first to their policyholders, charge them a 45% surcharge of their premium. And then if they still are, don't have enough to cover all the losses, then I'm sure they'll come to all the taxpayers.
Yeah, I think one year they had to go to all the insurance companies and they actually all had to pitch in to pay for Citizens.
Right, so that means anybody that had
Means-
a private carrier also, again,
We're all paying one way or the other.
right, every homeowner in Florida, they charge fees, they charged, like they call it a Florida FIGA, Florida Insurance Guarantee Association surcharge, all those little line items underneath your base premium, those are all kind of things to feed into the state and to the Citizens program.
Yeah, it's awful, awful. All right, awesome.
So,
Well, thank you so much.
well,
I
thank
really
you.
appreciate your
Yes,
time.
Thank you very much.
Please give Kim a call. And Kim, how would they reach you, by the way?
So my phone number, 813-510-1116, and my email is kim@floridabestquote.com.
Okay. Now, I will tell you, I highly recommend on your auto insurance, on your homeowners, any insurance for that matter, that you are writing a check for, if it's coming out, always get a quote. Always just find out what's happening because things do change. Insurance companies change. Coverages will stay the same, but the premium, some other company may be a little bit better with good service. That's Kim's job. She's going to give you that. And just take a look and do me a favor. Also call her about your auto. Because I know a lot of these companies will give you a discount when you go with the multiple policies. It's just a savings. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, give us a call.